The comparison between Apollo Creed and Clubber Lang is totally ridiculous, and it really shows that the average fan of the Rocky franchise and the Creed franchise lacks common sense. If you watch the third film of the Rocky series carefully, that you could see in one of these scenes where there was a sparring session. Both characters had their gloves on. They were boxing against each other. Rocky and Apollo were training. And Apollo says, "You thought I was strong, this guy will kill you to death." Clearly, this shows authentic proof that Clubber is stronger than Apollo. Apollo himself admitted that Clubber was stronger than him. If you don't believe me, then here's the image. This counter argument in favor of Apollo, they think that because Apollo's technique was a little bit more intelligent than Clubber's, because Apollo used a hit and run style or tactic of boxing combat, that means that he would win. But you're still wrong, because Clubber Lang was ranked the #1 contender. He gave Rocky a tougher time than Thunder Lips did. Do you really think Clubber Lang would have gotten to his status in the boxing world of sports if he never ever encountered a person who fights in a similar way to Apollo? If he has no experience dealing with a person that uses a hit and run strategy in combat, then how could he possibly have made it to the #1 contender position? It makes no sense. So clearly Clubber Lang has the experience needed to deal with Apollo Creed. Stop acting like Apollo Creed was tougher than Clubber Lang. I know that Rocky told Adonis that Apollo was the one who won that fight. But when you think about it, then you have to understand the mindset of Rocky. What was he supposed to tell Adonis when he met Adonis for the first time in his life? Was he supposed to say, "Hey, yeah, your dad was a great guy, but I beat him 3 times"? Was he supposed to say that? Was he supposed to say, "Yeah, I beat your father a 3rd time too"? Was he supposed to be more respectful and say, "Oh no, your father won"? Because he kept on saying that Apollo was the best fighter, and then Adonis asked him, how did you beat him then? So in order to justify this fake praise that he gave to Apollo as the best fighter, the best boxer, he had to lie and say, "Oh, Apollo won," when most likely it was probably either a stalemate, an undecided fight, where it's inconclusive, or Rocky might have just beaten him. Or even if Rocky lost, then the thing is, Rocky was not hungry. He was not hungry because he already has his title back. It doesn't really matter to him if he loses. If friendly exhibition bout where there's no audience to watch against Apollo. So people can't keep on saying, "Oh, Apollo's better than Rocky." People need to understand just like life is not that simple. Similarly, when you are having a discussion or when you are investigating, you are trying to find out the truth, not every statement made by a person can be considered credible. So certain character statements do not matter in a movie, but some do. Like Rocky saying that Apollo beat him, that statement does not matter. Similarly, Apollo being called the best fighter by Rocky also is a statement that does not matter. It's probably just Rocky being grateful to him because Apollo gave him publicity. He gave him his first big break, his first shout out by giving him the chance to fight him in the ring. And that's only because other people who were better fighters than Rocky refused to fight Apollo. What's important is the context behind each of these statements. The reason Apollo praising Clubber to be a guy that is tougher than himself in Rocky 3, that is a statement that matters, is because it matches with the context. How Mickey praised Clubber at the same time. How there's a factual incident that happened that Clubber clearly beat Rocky when Rocky was angry in Rocky 3. He beat him in the first 2 rounds very easily. A lot of people called it as Clubber's victory during the first round itself because by the end of that round, it was practically over. The second round, Rocky couldn't put up a fight. But Rocky knew that his trainer Mick was in pain, so he was really angry. He was hungry. He was hungry at that time. So Clubber has the achievements, he has the status, and other people also praised Clubber. So Apollo saying that Clubber is stronger than him in that movie does matter. That's a statement that you can take seriously. Now, there is at least one more statement that was made by a character that's not Rocky. This is a statement that I'm about to bring up that makes basically no sense and can be considered invalid. It should be ruled out. It was from Rocky IV in the locker room when Apollo Creed was dressing up to get ready for his big fight with Drago, just put his costume on. He told Rocky that I'm in the best shape of my life. I'm quicker. I'm stronger. But the truth is that that was a statement that could be considered a bluff instead, because clearly he was not at the best shape of his life. In my personal opinion, he was in the best shape of his life at Rocky 2, not Rocky 3, because Rocky 3 takes place years after Rocky 2. The statement that Apollo Creed made about himself being in the best shape of his life in Rocky 4, that's basically an example of a statement that is not authentic, that is not credible. Now, remember in the Creed franchise, Rocky told Adonis in the second film that he believes that Victor Drago is slow and rusty. But then Adonis called Rocky out and said, "But you don't think I could beat him?" Because he knows that Rocky doesn't always tell the truth. He knows that Rocky can lie if it fits his agenda, if it suits the situation, if he feels like it. So not everything that Rocky says is true, and not everything that Apollo says is true. So yeah, a statement like this, where Rocky says that Apollo beat him, that's a statement that you cannot take seriously. That's the point. When a Apollo Creed fan gets proven wrong, then they reply with this. That's your opinion and you're entitled to it. Let me say it in simpler terms. Quote, that's your opinion and you're entitled to it. End quote. Now, you can see that that's not a proper response. That's not a good response. That's a bad response. That just proves that you don't have any good reasons, any justifiable reasons for hyping Apollo up, for considering Apollo to be a better boxer than Clubber Lang or a better boxer than Ivan Drago. Even if Ivan Drago didn't have his steroids or performance-enhancing drugs, he would still be able to beat Apollo. Apollo clearly, if he can't stand one round again, he lost the first round against Drago. The second round wasn't necessary. Everybody knew who was going to win in that fourth movie. But you saw how easy it was for Ivan Drago. He wasn't taking Apollo Creed seriously. He didn't even train for Apollo Creed. And he's already 6'5". I'm sure that he could still beat Apollo without any drugs, without doping. It just would take more than one round. Apollo, whenever he has a high stakes fight, then he loses that fight on screen. There are a small portion of minor incidents where Apollo might have shined. But overall, he lost 4 different fights, and, well, technically 3 on-screen fights. He lost in the film. And it's clear that he himself admitted that he was inferior to other boxers like Clubber Lang. So Apollo is not the second best or the third best. Apollo, he only really ever does win on screen when he's having a sparring match, a training session. Like he was fighting nameless people in Rocky 2 to train and prepare for his big fight. And he did beat up on Rocky a couple of times during Rocky 3 during the training sessions, not during the off-screen secret fight. But in training sessions, he did dominate Rocky only because Rocky wasn't willing to fight. He wasn't trying his hardest. He was in a slump or a depression. He's not in his right state of mind. So Apollo is overall just an L. He's basically a loser. Apollo is overrated, and people need to stop praising him and stop glorifying him because he hasn't done anything great. He's more of a talker than a fighter. That's it.